Are you a lifelong fan of General Hospital?
Are you a new fan who wants to know more about the history of the show?
Do you enjoy talking about the show with others?
Do you find yourself yelling at the TV?
Is your self-care an hour a day in Port Charles?
If so, we invite you to join hosts
Amanda Kimmel
and Shannon Coach at the place where all the hidden conversations take place and secrets are revealed.
Meet us at Pier 54,
a General Hospital fan podcast. Hello.
Hi.
Welcome to the Port Charles 411, part 2 of Diane Miller. Except for we skipped a little bit to re-release our Secret Life of Damian Spinelli, because that's where part 1 ended, was talking about it. And that is a book that we read back when we were dedicated to doing a General Hospital book club that we were the only participants for.
Maybe with Molly's new book.
If anyone would like to join us we could do that. I mean, I would reread those books and have a roundtable discussion with our fans. I just feel like at the beginning when we did that, it was just us. So, So we hope that you enjoyed our recap of The Secret Life of Damian Spinelli. I'm sure that there's probably things that we have to add to it too.
I'm sure.
But yeah, so today we pick up with part 2 because she had a few years off.
Well, she had a few months off. She was there for the beginning of 2012. And then she kind of had the summer, early spring break. And again, I tried to stick to the main stories throughout all of the years, not just 2012. So there was a ton of, I guess this is a character that they have taken the suggestion or not taken our suggestion, because they did it before we said anything, of remembering that even though you don't see her, that she can still be there. So plenty of phone calls anytime anyone gets in trouble and then they called Diane, and then they told so-and-so to call Diane. And then they said, did you think of hiring Diane Miller? And so I left most of that out unless it went into an actual storyline, because if I had to list every time that they called Diane, this would be like 300 pages of just, and then they call Diane. So,
but let's just say Sunny and Jason have her on speed dial.
They sure do. And anyone else, it really is like when Alexis wasn't working, that she was the only attorney in town, because anytime anything happened, they were like, you should call Diane.
Yeah.
I know where she gets her millions from now. It all makes sense. So yeah, I didn't include that stuff. I went with like the real storyline that we should be remembering.
Yep.
All right, I will start then. So Todd Manning is sitting in the interrogation room across from John McBain. Diane walks in, told John he was her worst nightmare. Told John he was her worst nightmare, produced a legal document establishing that there was no evidence against her client, and walked Todd out the door. Outside, she handed him a bill and made it clear that this would be the first of many. She was right about that. Working with Todd proved to be as complicated as anyone might have expected. Behind the protection of attorney-client privilege, she drew out his confession that he had known about the baby switch and had been blackmailed by Heather Weber into silence. This is the Taya.
Yes.
Yes, the first baby switch. Right? Because I'm like, when I was reading it the first time, I'm like, 2012, that wasn't Wiley and whatever. No, we just switch babies often. So he had been blackmailed by Heather Weber into silence. She informed him plainly that if he had actively kept Sam away from her son, he could be charged with kidnapping, and her advice was immediate and direct. Tell no one. When he admitted that he had already told Starr, she observed that he seemed to have no particular difficulty lying to everyone else. I loved him in Starr.
This is really making me just so sad for losing these characters. But at the same time, we wouldn't have had a lot of the stuff that we have now, but man.
Right? How was that 2012? It does not feel like that long ago.
Yep.
That was a feeling I had through a lot of this too. I'm like, really? That was so long ago? It couldn't have been.
Yeah.
So her feelings about the people caught up in the baby switch were not entirely professional, however. When she arrived at Todd's office and found Carly grieving over Jason, she stopped and offered condolences that were completely genuine. She explained that Jason had been more than a client to her, and she had worked alongside him for years and respected him deeply, and that he had made certain Carly and the children were taken care of. It was one of the few moments where Diane sets her briefcase down, so to speak, and simply means what she says. Then Todd handed her Danny's paternity test results and asked her to get them to Sam without his name attached, and it was back in business. She showed up on Sam's doorstep with the envelope carefully hidden, but Sam noticed it immediately and things unraveled quickly. When Diane offered her condolences over Jason, Sam told her coldly that she would never turn to Diane for help after Diane had represented Todd. Diane explained herself. Charges had been dropped due to lack of evidence as they had been with other clients, but Sam ordered her to leave. At the door, Diane paused to say that Jason had been a good friend to her, not just a client, and she left with the envelope still in her possession. She later told Todd that she hadn't been able to do it, warning him again about the consequences if Sam ever traced the results back to him, and advised him to use a messenger service. When he suggested using Heather Weber instead, she informed him that delivering the results discreetly would cost him double. Todd objected that subterfuge seemed like a basic part of the job. Diane held out her hand and replied that the operative word was sell. What stood out during this entire stretch was the many conflicts of Diane managing them at once. She was representing Todd while also representing Johnny Zacchara, who told her he had incriminating information about Todd and offered to pay her more to use it. She refused on the grounds of conflict of interest, and when Johnny called her wanting to confess to causing the crash that killed Star's daughter and fiance, that was that crossover that we don't have anymore, she walked him through the legal consequences methodically. The confession would make him a murder suspect. The deaths were felonies, and Pentonville was not somewhere anyone chose willingly. She warned him that if he confessed to anyone, she would drop him immediately, and she meant it. She also appeared in the guardianship hearing on behalf of Connie Falconeri, facing Alexis Davis across the courtroom in a dispute over whether Connie or Kate Howard was the true host personality. That was so long ago. That I do remember is like forever ago. Her strategy was to argue that Kate was the alter, backing it up with a birth certificate and reframing the entire diagnosis. Alexis called it spinning the facts completely around, and afterwards reminded Diane that Kate was their friend who needed help. Diane acknowledged it and pointed out that she had simply done a better job. Todd's situation deteriorated steadily. He attempted to bribe a police officer. He tried to escape from the hospital. And without consulting Diane, he stood up in court and entered a not guilty plea by reason of insanity. She absorbed all of it and built a case around his documented history of post-traumatic stress disorder, arguing that the baby switch had been the result of Heather's manipulation of a man in a fragile mental state, and that his subsequent actions had been the behavior of someone in crisis rather than someone with criminal intent. It was enough to get him sent to Ferncliff for psychiatric evaluation rather than straight to prison. The trial itself was resolved largely by circumstances outside her control. Heather Weber took the stand and absolved Todd entirely. Pete Fillmore, who had been expected to be the prosecutor's key witness against Todd, admitted he had been ordered by Johnny to implicate Todd and chose instead to tell the truth. The prosecution collapsed. Diane immediately called for dismissal, argued down the remaining charges and won, and the judge dismissed everything. She was the only one left in the courtroom when Michael and Starr arrived expecting a trial. She told them Todd was a free man, picked up her briefcase, and left. Throughout it all, the conflicting clients, impossible cases, and ethical tightrope she walked on a daily basis, Diane remained consistent. She charged double for subterfuge, refused to cross the line to becoming a criminal herself, held firm on conflicts of interest even when offered more money, and delivered difficult truths to clients with the same efficiency she brought to courtroom victories. She made no moral judgments about the people she defended, but she was not without feeling. When Jason Morgan's name came up, something in her shifted just slightly every time. Her work with Franco proved to be among the most demanding and at times absurd entanglements of her career.
Yes.
Absurd.
This was first Franco.
Yes.
No. Was this first Franco? This was Roger Howarth Franco. This was
whenever he was still painting, though. Like he had just got the tumor removed, or he was just getting the tumor removed, because that was what the
Franco.
Right.
Yep.
Sorry, I meant when we say first Franco, I meant pre-tumor Franco, not Franco.
No, I was messing up my own timeline and forgot that 2013 is when we lost the characters, and so that's when they brought back Franco and all that stuff. We should really just do a 411 about that too, just so that can explain And we can just like go listen to that episode so we don't have to explain it every single time.
Right.
Even though we still will.
Yes, absolutely. So she took him on knowing exactly what she was getting into, or so she thought. She told him plainly at his arraignment that she believed him to be a monster who had caused people she cared about a great deal of pain. And when he asked why she had taken the case, the judge walked in before she could answer. The unanswered question said more than any response could have. She secured bail by arguing that Franco could have disappeared permanently, but had instead returned to clear his name, and when the district attorney failed to object, even Franco found it a little too easy. From there, Diane managed Franco's legal and financial situation with the same brisk efficiency she brought to everything else. When his assets were frozen by civil suits from victims' families, she assured him that she knew ways around it. When he needed an art show to generate income, she arranged one. When he kissed her in the middle of a restaurant to make Carly jealous without warning, she went along with it long enough to help him, and then made her displeasure known in no uncertain terms. When he introduced her to the gallery owner as his groupie, she was furious, and when Max concluded that she had slept with Franco and announced he was done carrying a flame for her, she ran after him to explain, but he refused to hear it.
No.
Poor Max. Her most audacious move on Franco's behalf came at the pretrial hearing when she walked into the courtroom, placed a paper bag on the table, and removed a jar with a brain tumor floating inside.
I remember that. That was great.
The prosecutor called it a cheap stunt. The judge asked on what grounds she was requesting dismissal. Diane explained that the tumor had been growing for years, had predated the crimes Franco had been charged with, and had been driving dark impulses that Franco had been fighting against his own will. She cited 2 New York cases to back up the argument. The judge conceded she had a valid point, even if he ultimately left the matter for trial. When Carly took the stand as one of Franco's victims and acknowledged that Franco had seemed to have changed after the surgery, Diane assessed the situation clearly afterwards. Carly's testimony, however well-intentioned, was likely to send Franco to jail for life. She was also navigating the discovery that Franco had not created the paintings he intended to sell. His actual muse was Heather Weber. Diane recognized the danger immediately and referenced the plot of Misery with enough specificity that Franco understood exactly what she was warning him about. She pushed for a release form. She tried to protect herself and Ava, who was hosting the show. When the art opening descended into chaos with Heather arriving in disguise and claiming her paintings in front of the assembled crowd, Diane did what Diane always does. She improvised. She stroked Heather's ego, carefully constructed a plausible explanation, and when Franco threatened to blow the whole thing open by telling the truth, Heather quietly stopped him herself. Diane then went directly to Scott Baldwin and pointed out that he had no case since Franco had used the painting with his mother's consent. Scott released Franco. Diane headed off to do damage control. And that was all those paintings of the sandwiches.
It's a BLT. It's sideways because they were showing it with the stripes going vertical. And she's like, no, it's supposed to be horizontal. Look it's a BLT. And I was just looking to see who the DA was. And you just said it. Like, I've been sitting here trying to find, and it was Scotty.
Yep.
Not knowing who Franco was to him.
And that's crazy. So her work with AJ Quartermaine ran alongside all this and was considerably higher stakes. She returned from vacation in St. Bart's, leaving a man named Manilow in a hot tub when she got the call that AJ was about to confess to Connie's murder. She arrived at the police station and shut it down immediately. She had Michael demonstrate the proper behavior for a client by reciting that he would say nothing without his attorney present, and she told him he sounded like he had sprung from her own loins. She built AJ's defense around the absence of physical evidence, arguing that Connie's writing his name in blood could have been a million explanations and that the rest of the case was entirely circumstantial. When a gun was found on the Quartermaine estate, hey, I wonder if it's the same gun. If we all use the same gun, that would be great. I don't know what they did with that gun, but that would just be fun. Like,
I was going to say, do they give them back? Go back. Like,
I don't know.
Do they? Wait.
I don't.
How does that work?
I don't know. If you steal my gun after you kill somebody, can I please have it back? I'm not sure.
Right. And we're just giving the FBI more and more.
I'm glad you're the one that Googles all this stuff.
Hold, please. I actually really do want to know this one, though, because they give back stolen property and they give back.
Right.
So hold on.
All right, I'll keep reading while you keep looking because you can interject that anywhere. When the gun was found on the Quartermaine estate, she didn't flinch. She pointed out that the ballistics hadn't confirmed anything and that Sonny Corinthos, the prosecutor's key witness, was hardly unimpeachable. She planned to stall the trial until after the election, hoping that Scott Baldwin winning the district attorney race would work in AJ's favor. And she told Michael and Kiki plainly that she intended to exploit her love-hate history with Scott to do it. When AJ began to unravel in the holding area, convinced he deserved to plead guilty because of what he said to Elizabeth, Diane told him to stop wallowing. She ordered him to fight. It was Michael who called Elizabeth, and it was Elizabeth's arrival in the courtroom that steadied AJ enough to enter the not guilty plea. But it was Diane standing beside him, glancing at him nervously as the judge repeated the question that had kept things together long enough to get to that moment.
So yes. If a gun is recovered by law enforcement, it goes through the process before any return is possible.
Oh my gosh.
So generally, yes, stolen firearms used in crimes can be returned to the original lawful owner.
Right.
So lawful owner. So I'm sure that they also, so first it's logged into evidence and held for the duration of the criminal investigation and any resulting prosecution. This can take months or even years. Then they verify the ownership, run the serial numbers through the database, make sure that it does belong to the person, check to see if it was reported stolen, and identify the original owner. The owner must have reported it stolen.
Okay.
If it was never reported stolen and the owner never filed a stolen property report, connecting them to the gun is much harder and the return is less likely. After the case closes, once the prosecution concludes and the firearm is released from evidence, the original owner can typically petition to have it returned. In most states, the owner must make a formal claim, and there might be a waiting period.
All right, good to know.
Oh, the gun itself was used in a homicide or other serious crime, which can extend the hold significantly. That could change it.
Okay.
Interesting.
So you really do need to make sure that you check on your guns every couple of days so that no one stole them. Because if you don't report that missing, oh man.
Yeah, don't display them. Keep them in a gun safe.
Oh. All right, here's another storyline that I forgot about. The custody battle for Rafe presented a different kind of complexity. She represented Silas Clay against Sam Morgan, and she did not soften her approach simply because Sam had been Jason's wife and Jason had been her friend. She characterized Sam in the worst possible light, widow of a career criminal, a woman with a checkered past, and got in several shots at Jason before the judge called a recess. Sam confronted her afterwards and told her she was deeply upset that Diane had trashed a man who had not only been her client but her friend. Diane's reasoning had already been laid bare by Silas himself, who admitted he hired Diane specifically because she had been Jason's lawyer and had ordered her to use every dirty trick legally available to her. She had, as always, done exactly what she was hired to do. And then we have the many custody cases over Georgie. So she also handled Maxie and Spinelli's custody fight for their baby at the same time, fighting Alexis on the other side and warning Maxie that the case would be neither pretty nor simple. When the judge sided with Dante and Lulu, she delivered the news directly and promised to keep fighting. She was equally direct with Morgan Corinthos, who came to her wanting an annulment from Kiki. She told him plainly that his belief that Sonny had always favored Michael over him was, and she apologized in advance for the expression, the biggest pot of crap she had ever heard. She spoke about Sonny with genuine respect, explained that she had gotten to know him over the years and had no doubt that he loved all his children fiercely and equally. When Morgan pointed out that her advice was unsolicited, she told him his remark would have been funny if it hadn't been so incredibly rude, and then told him that he sounded just like his father. I miss Morgan.
I know.
Even though he was doing bad things then, I miss Morgan.
But that's one that I'm really glad that they haven't. I really liked how they brought him back.
Yes.
But they need to not bring him back.
I agree, but I do miss him.
Absolutely.
The custody battle between Maxie and Spinelli on the other side and Dante and Lulu, Maxie and Spinelli on one side, Dante and Lulu on the other side, was a significant portion of her time and energy, and it showed her at both her most aggressive and candid. When Alexis dragged Robin Scorpio Drake's death into the proceedings, framing it as evidence of Maxie's unfitness, Diane objected immediately, calling the question false and inflammatory. After the recess, when Maxie instructed her to go after Lulu just as mercifully as Lulu had instructed Alexis to go after Maxie, Diane did exactly that. She put Lulu on the stand, walked her through Logan Hayes' death, and then asked about Lulu's abortion, a question Alexis objected to strenuously, and the judge ultimately ruled Lulu didn't have to answer. But Diane had made her point. Her most effective move came whenever she called Dante to the stand and asked him directly whether Lulu had lied when she denied discussing taking the baby and fleeing the jurisdiction. Dante was evasive. Diane and the judge reminded him that he was under oath, and as an officer of the law, he told the truth. It was a clean, precise piece of courtroom work, and it gave Diane exactly what she needed. I forgot about that too. That was like major Dante and Lulu stuff whenever he wouldn't lie on the stand for her.
Yep.
What she hadn't counted on was Spinelli. When he insisted on making a statement, she tried to direct him. When she referred to his friendship with Lulu as alleged, he corrected her firmly. There was nothing alleged about it. He then proceeded to defend Lulu's character from the witness stand, praising her integrity and expressing confidence that she would have made the right decision about the baby. Diane was not pleased. She brightened only when Spinelli pivoted to testify about his sincere desire to know and love his child, which was considerably more useful. In her closing, she argued simply and squarely that under the law, Maxie and Spinelli were the biological and therefore legal parents. She told the group afterwards that she believed they had a good chance of winning. She was wrong, and she knew it the moment the judge spoke. He ruled against Maxie, citing behavior he described as appalling from the beginning of the surrogacy right through the court proceedings. Diane pushed back, and she told the judge plainly that it wasn't fair to punish Maxie by taking her baby. It made no difference, and the ruling stood. Afterwards, she appeared at Maxie's apartment to make sure both Maxie and Spinelli understood the terms of the order. Maxie was to not come in within 20 feet of the baby, and Spinelli was to vacate the apartment completely. She said it directly to Spinelli, knowing Maxie's history of hearing only what she wanted to hear. She warned him that Maxie could end up in jail if she ignored the ruling, and that he could lose custody of his daughter if he helped her violate it. Then she handed Spinelli his portion of the bill, waived Maxie's fee entirely, and told Maxie she was deeply sorry for failing her. At the trial of A.J. Quartermaine for the murder of Connie Falconeri, Diane opened by telling the jury that the case against A.J. was purely circumstantial and that A.J. himself was the victim of the state. She cross-examined Sonny methodically, establishing his long history of animosity towards A.J. and forcing him to concede that Connie writing the initials A.J. in blood had not been accompanied by the words "shot me," making it far from conclusive proof of guilt. When Scott produced security footage from the Metro Court that the defense had never seen during discovery, Diane objected immediately. Scott claimed that the office just received it. Diane called the timing fortuitous and noted that she had requested copies of the footage months earlier and it had been told it was lost. She instructed AJ to keep his composure because every juror would be watching his reaction. When she realized that only portions of the footage were being offered, and the portion showing AJ actually shooting Connie or leaving afterwards were conspicuously absent, she argued that the incomplete footage was prejudicial and moved to have it barred. The judge agreed it was a significant win, and she received genuine thanks from Michael for it. She then announced that the defense had no witnesses to call. AJ objected and demanded to testify in his own defense. She told him it was a mistake and warned him that she would resign if he took the stand. He fired her. She walked out of the courtroom as he took the stand, and Scott quarreled from the prosecution table. Away from the courtroom, she continued managing a client list that defied easy summary. She returned from vacation. She went on a lot of vacations. At least she's spending her money.
Hey, work hard, play hard.
I like it. She returned from vacation in Sporitus with Max to find that Liesl Obrecht had retained her to represent Britt Westbourne, who had been arrested for stealing Dante and Lulu's frozen embryo. Dante and Lulu
I would probably take a big vacation after every significant trial just to decompress.
True. I'm glad she had Max on this one. That one makes me happy.
Yes.
Dante and Lulu were outraged. Diane, who had just read about the situation on a newspaper Lulu handed her, pointed out that the law had not yet caught up with science and that Britt had not technically violated any statutes. She acknowledged that at best it constituted larceny, secured a court order by noon, and watched Britt walk free while Lulu stormed out in disgust. She took on Carlos Rivero as a client, reminding him that they were protected by attorney-client privilege, and was in the process of drawing out his full account when Ava called and had Diane leave the room so Ava could instruct Carlos directly. Diane returned to find that Carlos, like Franco before him, had decided to take his chances and plead the fifth. She was stunned that 2 clients in one day had declared to take advantage of what she could offer them in a courtroom. Diane found it equally remarkable. Well, that's because Ava's playing in it. Keep Ava away from your stuff. I wouldn't even let Ava visit people. Sorry, you're not allowed. Her work on Ric Lansing's behalf was among one of her more personal engagements. Yeah, see, Ric, that we pretend he needs to handle everything because Diane can't, but yet she is hiring Ric.
Right.
She read the police report and identified immediately that the evidence against Ric, including a gun with his fingerprints found in the hotel suite, was circumstantial and made no logical sense for an intelligent man to have left behind. She went to the hospital to find Elizabeth and told her directly that she appeared to be acting out of fear rather than judgment, and she might end up with the same regret about Ric that she already carried about AJ. Elizabeth didn't answer. Diane called her assistant to report that she had failed to win Elizabeth over. Stepping into the elevator was Elizabeth, and then she realized that she may have had a change of heart. Elizabeth hired her on the spot. Diane smiled and told her assistant to cancel that last call. She arrived at the police station with Elizabeth and Molly, argued for Ric to have visitors, and was in the process of presenting Anna for access when a shot rang out from the direction of the holding cell. And this is all that stuff that we just talked about with Ric, that he faked his own death for protection. I'll finish the paragraph, but as I was writing it, I was like, hey, but this sounds so familiar. We just did this.
I really like whenever they all blend together.
Yes, it doesn't make it feel so far away then. Anna locked them in the interrogation room. Diane secured the side of the door as instructed and spent the next several minutes keeping Elizabeth and Molly as calm as she could, reminding them that Ric had been under Nathan's protection. When Anna appeared in the doorway and delivered the news that Nathan had shot Ric and that Ric had been fatally wounded, Diane told Anna plainly that the police department would be facing a lawsuit. Then she set that aside and tried to comfort Molly, who ran to the gurney in the hallway and asked if it was her father. Later, she came back to let Molly know that Alexis was on her way and quietly offered to call someone for Elizabeth. Elizabeth said no, and there was nothing else Diane could do in that moment, but she stayed there, which was sweet. I like her relationship. But she's a good attorney, but at the same time, you see that softer side.
She's an excellent friend.
Yes. So then we're back to another Georgie, getting visitation of Georgie. I think this is where the new year started, or we were into the next year. I think this is 13 or 14. I think it was 14 because it wasn't Georgie born in 13.
I think so.
I think she's a year younger than Madeline, which is how I try to remember. So Diane's next case was helping Maxie get visitation of Georgie. Right away, Diane is sharp and on her feet when Judge Walters tries to put Nathan under oath during what is supposed to be a routine custody hearing. Diane immediately objects, pointing that it's not standard procedure. Then when she later finds out that the same judge has been privately threatening to deny Maxie visitation if Maxie keeps dating Nathan, Diane is absolutely furious, calling it a blatant misapplication of authority. She looks into filing a formal complaint against him. She considers reaching out to Monica Quartermaine, who apparently has a personal connection to the judge, but ultimately she concludes that pushing too hard could backfire and hurt Maxie even more. So she made the difficult call to advise caution over confrontation. When Carly gets denied by Judge Chua, Diane doesn't crumble, she immediately reassures Sonny that she shines at trial and that she can get her acquitted. She also is practical enough to suggest that Sonny hand over a recording of Ava confessing to murder, using it as a bargaining chip with the district attorney for leniency. Sonny refuses, which Diane clearly finds frustrating, but she respects his decision. When Sonny ultimately decides to plead guilty in exchange for dropping all charges against Carly, Diane supports him and tries her best to leverage his cooperation into a lighter sentence. And then Morgan's in serious legal trouble again, and Diane comes up with a clever and compassionate plan. She wants to use Morgan's mental health illness diagnosis to appeal to the district attorney for probation rather than jail time, with Sonny and Carly agreeing to take legal responsibility for his care. When Paul refuses even that and insists on pressing charges, she lays out two options for the family: take their chances with the jury, which she warns is an uphill battle, or agree to have Morgan voluntarily committed to a treatment facility. Morgan explodes. He's furious. He insists he's getting better. He fires Diane on the spot and he accuses everyone of betraying him. And Diane, rather than washing her hands of it, quietly told Sonny and Carly that she had known Morgan since he was a child and genuinely wants what's best for him. Even after being fired, she calmly asked Sonny if he wants her to draw up the commitment papers. Oh, and then we're to Luke. Diane shows up at the police station to represent Luke, despite the fact that he's been charged with attempting to kill 50 people, assaulting a police officer, ordering a hit on Lucas, and conspiracy and extorting charges. On top of all that, he just threatened to kill Dante, Lulu, and their baby in front of everyone. Diane was furious that she would take the case. No, I can't read. I'm sorry. Dante. I'm like, what? Dante was...
Diane is spelled really weird.
Right? Exactly. I'm like, I can't read. Sorry.
Okay.
So Luke threatened everybody. Dante, rightfully so, was furious that she would take the case, but Diane was unmoved. She insisted that Luke had constitutional rights and that he had been detained for days without an arraignment, that he was subject to a medical exam without his consent or legal counsel, and she demanded a bail hearing first thing in the morning and threatened to go over everyone's head if she didn't get one. Nathan eventually agreed to the arrangement. Behind closed door, Luke made a veiled threat towards Diane herself if she failed to get him released, but of course she stayed completely professional. And that was Luke.
Yeah. I think everyone knows that, though, because Luke would not.
Right. He wouldn't threaten Lulu. But
yeah.
I can understand why Dante was like, why are you trying to represent him?
Yes. So then we pick up with Diane and Alexis. We're on opposite sides of a breastfeeding lawsuit, with Diane representing Mayor Lomax and Alexis representing Olivia. They go at each other hard in the courtroom, trading sharp arguments. Alexis confronts Diane for representing the mayor, and Diane essentially shrugs and says everyone deserves the best defense money can buy. But then, in a wonderful turn, when the mayor starts making threats against Carly and the Corinthos family, Diane simply switches sides on the spot. She announces that her long-standing relationship with the Corinthos family trumps everything. And she helps Carly pressure the mayor into reopening the Metro Court by citing clear abuse of power, and then congratulates Alexis warmly on the victory before cheekily claiming she let Alexis win. No, she knew she was not going to win that one.
Right, that one was ridiculous. There are breastfeeding laws for a reason.
Hayden went to Diane to have legal documents drawn up that would transfer the bulk of Nicholas's fortune and ELQ itself over to Hayden, supposedly to protect his assets from a Quartermaine lawsuit. Diane prepared the documents in good faith, taking Hayden at her word that she was acting on Nicholas's behalf. But when Hayden showed up to collect those documents, she walked into Diane's suite and finds Nicholas already sitting there, completely unaware of any of this. And Diane's politeness vanishes immediately. She blasts Hayden for misleading her and making it clear that Nicholas hadn't known any of it, and essentially calls out the whole scheme for what it is. Once Nicholas has a private word with Hayden, and oh man, do I miss
right
Nicholas and Hayden. I can just picture him like standing and like getting, I miss Tyler Christopher.
Yeah, I know.
And comes back apparently satisfied. Diana is still quietly skeptical. When Nicholas, and you know that he was probably like, and I'm going to hold your blackmail over you, and this is how this is going to work. And then they probably had a quickie and went back to Diane. When Nicholas starts asking pointed questions about exactly what Hayden told Diane when she had made the request, Diane answers honestly and then offers him some telling advice. She points to Sonny and Carly as the example of a couple who trust each other implicitly and tells Nicholas plainly that he shouldn't sign the addendum if he already has any doubts about Hayden. He tells her to put the whole thing on hold, including the updated will. Then later, when the IRS came after Nicholas over back taxes related to the ELQ transfer, Diane was in the middle of it, and this time delivering bad news to Nicholas that Jason had filed tax papers as required for transparency. Nicholas is furious and accuses Diane of negligence. She's not your accountant.
Nope.
But she holds her ground, explaining that the transparency had been made mandatory to prevent the Quartermaines from challenging the transfer. Of course, I have no idea what the challenge, like the transfer document, it might actually be illegal and not an accounting thing. She even pointedly notes that Nicholas probably has enough money tucked away in priceless artwork alone to cover the debt. Yeah. Alexis lets Diane into her house and tearfully admits that she needs to hire her. Alexis is in serious trouble. She has evidence against her husband, Julian, for murder, but she's terrified and conflicted about turning him in. Diane immediately grasps the gravity of the situation and starts thinking practically. She reminds Alexis that she can't be forced to testify against her husband, then asks directly whether Alexis is worried about protecting herself. When Alexis nods, Diane doesn't flinch. She tells her that the police and the FBI would be thrilled to have Julian dead to rights, and she promised to broker an immunity deal. But Julian walked in before they could finalize anything, so Diane covers brilliantly by announcing that she and Alexis are heading out for a manicure together. Once they're outside, Diane asks dryly whether they're going to the police or the nail salon. And when Alexis says nails, Diane just rolls with it, understanding that Alexis needs a little more time. And Diane gives her that time, but she's also very clear that it cannot go on indefinitely. When she meets Alexis in the park, instead of at the police station as they had planned, she listened to Alexis explain that she hadn't been able to move forward while Lucas was in a coma. Diane is sympathetic but firm. She warns Alexis that withholding evidence is a crime. I don't feel like that's a warning. I feel like that's a reminder. If you're an attorney and you don't know that,
right? Aren't you an attorney? Even if you are disbarred at the moment, which she wasn't at this point, don't you know the legal ramifications? You can't withhold stuff. Sorry, darling.
And that she needs to act quickly to preserve any chance of an immunity deal and keep her law license. Then she notices Alexis's guilty expression and immediately realizes that Alexis is planning to warn Julian before turning him in. Diane strongly advises against it, worried that Julian is dangerous and might seduce Alexis into changing her mind entirely. When Alexis does end up getting arrested, Diane wastes no time. She arrives at the interrogation room and apologizes for not getting there sooner, and then promptly refuses to let Alexis wallow in guilt or self-pity. She lays out the situation clearly. The police have one damaging piece of evidence, a window of time Alexis can't account for, and Carlos's deal to testify against Julian also inadvertently implicates Alexis. It looks bad, Diane admitted, but then she straightens up and tells Alexis in no uncertain terms that Alexis is lucky to have her because Diane will question every piece of evidence and do whatever it takes to establish a reasonable doubt. She then promises Alexis that she will go free. She then works to get Alexis bail, which she successfully argues down to a remarkably low $10,000. That's really low.
I mean, if you were implicated in helping murder people, I mean, Julian was a crime boss, so 10,000 is probably not that much.
It's not that much for them to pay, but it's very low for them to set bail at for that, I feel. She's even savvy enough to notice afterward that Paul Hornsby had requested remand without bail, which was so unreasonable that it actually opened the door for the judge to grant Diane's low bail request. That explains it. She then tells Paul directly that she's certain he knew better, essentially crediting him with helping her while also calling him out. Diane is also tending to Alexis as a friend, not just a client. When she arrives at Alexis's house to take her to Julian's arraignment, she spots Alexis trying to hide a pregnancy test. She doesn't look away or pretend she didn't see it. She asks directly if Alexis is pregnant and then immediately assures her that she'll support her whatever Alexis decides. When Alexis says she is not pregnant, Diane is relieved for practical reasons, but she also gently observes that Alexis seems a little disappointed. And when Alexis insists that all she feels for Julian is fear and loathing, Diane pushes back with real tenderness, reminding Alexis that she had intended to build a life with this man and that love doesn't just switch off. At Julian's arraignment, Well, Diane is there right beside Alexis. And when Julian has the audacity to ask the judge to release him into Alexis's custody, I feel like that's not something they would consider. Like, no, we're not going to release you into your potential co-conspirator who is out on bail's custody. Diane immediately objects, explaining to the court that Alexis has filed for divorce because Julian had terrorized and attempted to murder her. She is fierce and unequivocal in protecting Alexis, even as Julian continues to insist that they love each other. And then there's the Bar Association hearing. Diane has done everything she possibly can to paint Alexis in the best light, but she even gets an unexpected boost when Olivia shows up to speak on Alexis's behalf, arguing that Mayor Lomax has a personal vendetta against Alexis stemming from the breastfeeding lawsuit. Diane lets Alexis speak for herself, and Alexis gives a moving statement about her history and her commitment to justice. But in the end, the committee suspends Alexis's law license for a year with the possibility of permanent revocation after the year is up. When the decision comes down, Diane is right there. And then she takes Alexis to the Metro Court for vodka martinis because that's what you do with your friend who's an alcoholic.
She wasn't an alcoholic yet.
I think she had issues with alcohol before.
They had not discussed that yet. We will get there. They have not discussed that yet.
They hadn't discussed it yet, but if you have concerns that a friend drinks too much, don't take them out for celebratory.
They didn't have concerns yet. Like Alexis,
I thought that she had already started to go to stuff when she was with Julian.
She may have been drinking too much because of Julian, and like Alexis may have known that that's how she was dealing with it, but other people had not realized that she was in trouble yet.
When did Alexis start AA?
It's not until 17 or 18. I think it's 18. I think we have another year.
Okay.
I'm telling you, we'll get there. I promise.
I thought that she had an issue before I guess you're right. Like she would have had that from Diane.
They do an intervention that we will get to eventually. And that has not happened yet. So no one was aware that she had an issue.
I know that, but like, I thought that she had an issue before that. And they were like, we let you handle it on your own before. It's not working. So now we're tough loving you.
At this point, they didn't realize it was an issue yet, so it was still okay to go have drinks.
Okay. From the Sunny storyline involving Morgan's death and the bomb planted in Julian's car, Diane is back in full professional form. Diane then moves on to the storyline involving Morgan's death and the bomb planted in Julian's car. She strolls into the squad room and immediately asserts that any statements Sunny made without counsel present are inadmissible. She defends Jason when Jordan threatens to throw him in jail for talking to Sunny, countering that she'll file a string of lawsuits against Jordan and the entire police department. And when Sunny changes his mind about cooperating with the police after Jason talks to him, Diane listens to everything Sunny said at the church and confidently tells him she can argue that he was speaking metaphorically as a grief-stricken father. She gets him house arrest instead of jail while awaiting trial, walks out having argued circles around everyone in the room. And then when Sunny asks if she can actually get him out of this, she looks him dead in the eye and says, "Have you met me? I'm Diane Miller, Esquire. I can do this with my eyes closed." She even offers to have her files sent to Sunny's house so she can work from there and keep him company, sensing that he's lonely and sad. He tells her he'll be fine and kisses him on the cheek and leaves. So she did start in 2016. So I'm not entirely wrong, but It wasn't until it was after Julian was acquitted of murder and her license was suspended. That's when she turned to alcohol. So it is the same timeline. I'm remembering her because Julian knew that she had a drinking problem. Then he's who saw her first.
Yes. But her family and friends did not recognize it yet.
Yep. But late 2016 is about when she started with meetings. But I feel like that was a lot to digest in a very short amount of time about Diane. I mean, she's back to back to back to back crimes.
Yeah. She was busy there. She's lightened up a little bit in the more recent years.
So I guess next week we will wrap up with, where did we just leave off then? Like around 2016-ish?
Right. So we'll pick up in 17.
Okay. And we all know that she took a little bit of time off. So or not even really that. She was just like so sparse.
Yeah. Like I said, there was lots of months where it was just like, oh, so-and-so called her, but she didn't actually talk to, you didn't hear her have to go to trial, have to do whatever. She was just giving basic advice. So,
yeah. All right. So join us on Monday as we recap this week's shows and see if Diane's kicking any butt.
Have a good weekend.
And we'll meet you at the pier.
Bye.
Bye.
If you enjoyed today's show, we invite you to go to peer54podcast.com to subscribe on your favorite platform. Don't forget to leave us a review.
And you can also follow us on many social media channels. Just search for Peer 54 Podcast. Also, we are not perfect, so if there is something that we missed or messed up, just let us know by emailing us at peer54podcast@gmail.com.